The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all to the third EVPA policy webinar of the year. Today's topic will be about Unifying for Impact, who are the facilitators of the social impact investment ecosystem. My name is Bianca Polidoro. I am EVPA's policy manager, and I will be moderating the webinar. Before we dive into the topic of today's webinar, let me walk you through some technical aspects. Through this session, you will be able to open or hide the control panel, which is the console that appears on the right-hand side of your screen. Please note that the control panel automatically collapses when it's not being used, but you can keep it visible via the View menu on the top. In the Join Audio section of the control panel, you should tick the option Microphone and Speakers. If you are joining the webinar through internet, if you are using the telephone rather than the VoIP, you must choose Telephone and use the PIN code provided in the confirmation you received when you register for this webinar. You can also see the PIN on this slide. If you happen to have any technical issues, please do not hesitate to call EVPA and get in touch with my colleague Gianluca Gaggiotti. You can find his contact details on this slide. Given the high level of participation to today's session, we will be keeping the participants to the webinar muted in order to avoid noise interferences, but we really encourage you all to raise any questions you might have. If you do have a question, please write it in the question section of the control panel at any point during the webinar. Please do not forget to clearly mention to whom you would like to address it. The last part of today's webinar will consist of an interactive Q&A session, during which we will address your questions to the panelists. If for some reason your question has not been answered during the webinar, feel free to contact us via email afterwards and we will ensure the necessary follow-up. You can also use that question section to let us know about any technical problems you experience. Last but not least, note that this session is being recorded, so you will be able to watch the recording and consult this presentation as of next week on EVPA's website. Now that these housekeeping details are clear, let me give you a quick word about the European Venture Philanthropy Association. EVPA is a membership organization currently gathering more than 300 members from all across Europe that are interested in or are practicing venture philanthropy and social investment. Our members include foundations, social investors, academics, financial institutions, and service providers. Our policy and public affairs work relies on two pillars. First, in our role as thought leader, we act as a counterpart for the institutions of the EU by being the voice of the sector, communicating the concerns and expectations of our members to European policymakers. Doing so, we lead the discussion and shape the debate. We also spot and discuss key topics of interest to our sector, including relevant initiatives undertaken by the EU. Second, in our role as catalysts, we bring different actors together in conversation and collaboration in order to increase mutual understanding, shared value, and impact. We are carrying out initiatives that tap into the synergy between the public and private sector and showcase best policy practices and inspirational success stories from our sector. We aim to inform, initiate interaction, and also inspire. Let me now speak about the Policy Webinar Series. The Policy Webinar Series is a project we started in 2014 and through which we could reach more than 1,000 people. This series connects policymakers and practitioners in the venture philanthropy and social investment sector around topics of interest with the policy angle. As you can see, we have already addressed issues such as social impact bonds, public procurement, retail impact investing, or crowdfunding. If you are interested in these topics, all recordings and presentations are available on our website. At the end of the webinar, a short survey will pop up on your screen. We would greatly appreciate if you could take 2 minutes to fill this in. It is also an opportunity to let us know about a specific policy topic you would like us to address in our policy webinar series, so don't hesitate to grab it. Today's topic is Unifying for Impact. Who are the facilitators of the social impact investment ecosystem? And we will discuss it with three great speakers. Cyril Langerdorf, Managing Director of the Private Equity and International Affairs Department of the French cooperative bank, Crédit Coopératif, and he has over 20 years of experience in the banking sector. José Luis Ruiz de Munian, Founder, CEO of Impacto, and among others, he is also Senior Advisor for the International Venture Philanthropy Center. Julie Gramberwachter, Deputy Director, Equity Investments at the European Investment Fund, and Senior Professional in Venture Capital and Private Equity. Let me introduce you the webinar's agenda. First of all, I will give you a short introduction. Then Cyril Langerdorf will showcase the National Advisory Board experience in France. Afterwards, José Luis Ruiz de Munian will present the Spain National Advisory Board beginner experience. Then Julie Gramberwachter will highlight the priorities and challenges of the impact investing ecosystem at the European level according to the European Investment Fund. At the end of these three presentations, we'll have a Q&A session with speakers. We'll finish this webinar with an EVPA conclusion. Now, before leaving the floor to our first speaker, I would like to explain what are the National Advisory Board, NABs, for those of you who are not familiar with them. The NABs work to catalyze impact investment in their country, connecting several stakeholders to facilitate the growth in the sector. All the NABs are part of the Global Steering Group on Impact Investment, GSG. The GSG was established in August 2015 as an independent global steering group catalyzing impact investment and entrepreneurship to benefit people and planet. The GSG currently has 23 countries, plus the EU as a member. Chaired by Sir Ronald Cohen, the GSG brings together leaders from the worlds of finance, business, and philanthropy. Today, we'll examine two different NABs cases, the French and the Spain one. These are two particular cases because France has been at the forefront of establishing a NAB in 2013, while Spain has created a NAB and joined the GSG only this year. During this webinar, EVPA wants to highlight the process, motivation, expectation of the impact investing ecosystem from both experience and beginner perspectives. EVPA aims to facilitate the exchange between these countries, showcasing the best practices in the impact investment ecosystem in different spaces, highlighting the diversity and at the same time the common goals. Moreover, the webinar will try to clarify the priorities and the challenges of the impact investment ecosystem at the European level according to the European Investment Fund. Indeed, the European role is fundamental to coordinate the activities among these countries in this sector. Thank you. Now, please, Cyril, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Bianca, for organizing this webinar. So I'm chair of the French National Advisory Board, and the board is comprised of around 30 people in France, experts in social impact investing. I will briefly come back on the history of our NAB, which, as Bianca said, was straight from the start of the task force for social impact investment in 2013. It was established, the French NAB was established in 2013 under the chairmanship of Hugues Sibyl, who was vice chair of Crédit Coopératif, and that's why Crédit Coopératif is the bank I work for and is very active to lead the topic and the debate on this. In 2014, like all the country NABs of the task force, France presented a report on how to improve and to develop the social impact investment market in France, with 22 recommendations that were submitted to the Secretary of State for Social and Solidarity Economy at the time, Carole Delga. And this report was not very, there was no follow-up from the Secretary of State, and we had to wait for in 2016 a new Secretary of State for Social and Solidarity Economy, Martine Pinville, who looked at the report and especially some of the recommendations of the report, especially the ones trying to bring into focus the social impact bond and to introduce social impact bonds in France. The government launches at the time a call for CIB proposals. In French, CIBs are called Contrats à Impact Social, and 13 CIBs, or 13 CIS, have been labeled after these different calls of proposals. And today, in 2019, 7 CIBs have been signed. And this year, the French government, under the leadership of the High Commissioner for Social and Solidarity Economy and Social Innovation, Christophe Itier, has mandated a working group to work on to streamline the process of CIBs, to accelerate their development. And this working group has just officially released its report, only available in French, unfortunately for the moment. It was officially released last week, and it introduces the first outcome payment fund in France, which should start in 2020, with 3 ministries involved in this outcome payment fund. Also, the High Commissioner, Christophe Itier, asked the group of experts of the French NAB to update the recommendations of the 2014 report, and we are working currently on an update on this report, which should be available at the end of the year. So, to help the actors respond to the call for CIBs in 2016, the Impact Invest Lab was created in 2016. It's an association with 6 founding members. So you can see on the screen: Crédit Coopératif, INCO, Caisse des Dépôts, which is the state-owned bank, Banque des Territoires, Centre Français des Fondations, so the body for foundations, MOVE, which is the movement of social entrepreneurs, and Finansol, which is an association dedicated to solidarity-based finance. So you can see what are the missions of this Impact Invest Lab, mostly producing feasibility studies for social impact bonds and pay-by-result scheme to help to train the actors that want to enter into this project. But also the missions are to conduct research on topics around impact investment, to share expertise, and also to be the link with the GSG, because there's work done at the GSG level, and also to produce a newsletter to market what is being done elsewhere outside France in the impact investment field. So today, this association has 18 members. 2 new members were approved yesterday, so you can see on one of the slides it's 16, but we have 2 new members from yesterday. We have also we have banks, we have insurers, we have all the actors, NGOs, and we have also the French DFI, AFD, because since the start, the Foreign Affairs Ministry is part of the work on social impact investment. Social impact investing in France, what is it? We have produced in 2014 with the experts a definition of what is social impact investing. We reach a consensus on this definition that you can read: an investment that combines social and financial returns on investment. We can measure through a regular evaluation process the objective, the impact. These investments can target financial returns ranging from no return to market return, and very much important, these investments shall intentionally target organizations that generate social benefits alongside financial benefits. The French social impact investing market, last year we produced in the lab a report on what is the state of the market currently. So you can see on the slide that the market at the end of 2017 is around 3.2 billion euro of assets under management, with two networks. First one, which is Finansol, which is as I mentioned, the association that centralizes all the information on the solidarity-based finance. I will come back on that. And France Invest, which is the private equity professional body in France for private equity. And inside this organization, there is an impact investment private equity group, which I will come back. The tools are available, different tools are available to finance the social economy organizations, with equity for associations called titre associatif, participating equity, also social impact bonds, as I mentioned. So we have a broad range of financial tools available, thanks to different experience in 30 years. And also these tools were introduced in different laws also over the last 30 years. The main sectors that are targeted by these investors are work inclusion, social housing, health and social care, and environment. So these are the main sectors of investment. So turning back to solidarity-based finance in France, we have a history now of 18 years, even more, on solidarity-based finance. What is solidarity-based finance? Basically two mechanisms. The first one is revenue sharing with NGOs. That means individuals can share part of the remuneration of a passbook or an investment fund with an NGO of their choice. And the second mechanism is what we call 90-10 investment funds, meaning investment funds that invest up to 10% in solidarity-based organizations. These organizations have a label from the states that recognize this social impact. And the first law on these 90-10 funds was produced in 2001, and it was reviewed in 2008. And today you can see on the screen these funds that are available in employee saving schemes represent a total amount under management of 8 billion euro at the end of 2018. We just got the 2018 figures, and the amount of total solidarity-based savings is 12.5 billion euro. So there's a good amount of money available for social economy organizations in France, and we don't lack money. What we lack is to have more projects where this money can be invested. So on the next slide, you can see what is the mechanism of these 90-10 investment funds. So the first one was created 25 years ago in 1994, and is managed by Mirova, one of the biggest asset manager here in France. And you see that the 90% of the fund is invested in normal equity bonds, mostly according to socially responsible investment methodology. And the 10%, up to 10%, and the minimum of 5% is invested in companies with social impact, or can be also invested in microfinance funds. So on the next slide, the return of these 5 to 10% solidarity-based assets is quite low, is around either zero or very low return. I would call it a solidarity-based return. On the 90 to 95% part, it's more a market return, depending on market conditions, of course. The next slide is briefly what I mentioned on social impact bonds, contrat impact social. So today we have this new report how to accelerate the development of SIBs in France, creation of an outcome payment fund, creation of a center of expertise that will start probably at the end of the year, and also creation of a center for services in order to do the middle and back office of these SIBs. We are in the Impact Investment Lab, we are working on the guidebook on SIB feasibility study, which will be released at the end of the year. So there is definitely a good amount of development on this front, and 7 SIBs launched today, probably 10 at the end of the year, and more next year. Also, on the development impact bonds, the French government has started a study to launch the first DIB in Africa, and this project was referred into the late G7 meeting in Biarritz, where it was referred to this DIB in the Sahel Action Plan, which is the focus of the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the government. Another best practice is the France Active model. I will go very quickly because time is, I think, is running. So France Active is one of the key organizations to deliver impact investments on the ground. They associate capital investments. They also give loans and guarantees, and they put that money in action through 42 local associations, local funds. So they are really on the ground to meet social entrepreneurs, to finance social entrepreneurs in the territories. And the particularity of France Active model, it has both private and public funding. Next slide on France Invest. So France Invest is growing very fast. More and more asset managers, private equity asset managers focusing on social businesses. Today, the subgroup on impact investment gathers 33 impact investors managing 1.7 billion euro. And they all agree with the France Invest Impact Charter, which you can see the 3 pillars combining impact and financial performance. They are also committed to help entrepreneurs and to coach them, and finally to measure impact, including an alignment carried on impact performance. Finally, impact investing by corporates. And France has been at the forefront, the corporates have been at the forefront of some major initiatives. Danone launched Danone Communities Fund, and they launched a joint venture with Grameen Bank in the late 2000. So they created this fund. Also, Schneider Electric launched a fund to address access to energy both in France and also abroad. And Renault on the mobility side, also some of these corporates have created dedicated funds around their core business activity. So regarding the European perspective, to conclude, one of the issues that we could raise at the European level is the question of the promissory notes, which are used by 90/10 funds to finance social businesses. But these notes are not eligible into funds regulated by the UCITS 5 directive. So we could work on this in order to make promissory notes eligible into UCITS 5. Also, regarding the banks, the idea would be to introduce a social supporting factor in the European Capital Requirement Regulation that would incentivize banks to do more social impact lending. There is also the question of a green supporting factor. Social supporting factor could also help to banks to lend to this sector. So these are the few ideas, and I will conclude on that, and we leave the floor to José Luis to present the Spanish case.
Thank you very much, Cyril. And please now, José Luis, the floor is yours.
So thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. For those of you that are in Europe, and also if I know some people are looking at us from Latin America as well. So thank you. First of all, thank you so much to EVPA for organizing this this webinar and letting us present our beginner initiative. So first of all, presenting the way we and why we are today here and how we became part of the GSG. So go ahead with the slide. First of all, a brief snapshot about the sector in Spain. And here we're following the pillars of the GSG, because while Foro Impacto and the Spain app obviously is promoting impact investment, but for us it was very important from the beginning, really to focus on not just on the supply of this sort of capital, but also on the demand and the intermediation. So very briefly on the demand side, we share a lot of similarities with the French case. In that sense, we see a strong social economy sector that by law in Spain, there is a law of 2011 that represents 10% of the Spanish GDP. That obviously doesn't mean at all that all this impact investment, but what we see is that there is an emerging trend of new sorts of social entrepreneurs, some of them very connected with social economy, others not, and also the entry of new players from the financial industry. Here again, some solidarity financial institutions, but other traditional players that are also entering this game. So on the demand side, connecting, focusing a bit on this new emerging trend, what we've identified, there is a number around 8 to 12 social incubators, accelerators that are creating also this new pipeline of investable social enterprises that together with the social economy, traditional social economy enterprises are making the market. On the supply side, what we see, and this is good news, is that there is a strong interest by the public sector, an emerging interest, and the launch of new funds or new sources of capital. So in that sense, we saw in 2019 two public sector institutions, one of them at the central level, which is ICO, which is Instituto de Crédito Oficial, which is the largest credit provider in Spain, that just released 50 million of euros to be invested in intermediaries, in impact funds. And also on the other hand, the City Council of Madrid also, in their case, 30 million towards these new impact funds. Still on the institutional investor side, it's still it's very low. Institutional investors are still seeing the market too risky for them. Also, obviously, there is a regulatory aspect of it, but also, as in the other case, we see raising more and more interest. On intermediation part of it, regarding impact funds. What we've seen, there is around 10 to 10 impact funds in Spain. There is also an emerging interest on social impact bonds. Right now, we don't have any social impact bond in Spain. We do have a number of feasibility studies ongoing, mainly by municipal and regional governments, not yet by the central government. But again, there is a rising interest. On regulation, also here we have now two impact funds that are registered under the USEF regulation, mainly and from a public perspective, the Basque government has also a few 2-3 years ago released a number of tax incentives for fund managers seeking to register under USEF regulation to apply for that in the Basque country. And well, obviously for Impacto as a market builder, no? And so, well, you see, I don't want to enter in very much in depth into the data, but well, social responsible investment is now quite big in Spain, 185 billion euros asset under management. Foundations also 5 billion, as I told you, the social economy, and well, in terms of impact investing as such, you see the figure is quite small. It's only 90 million euros. This is only asset under management. That doesn't mean it doesn't include the 80 million euros I was referring before. This is the first landscape we did with our academic partner, with CESADE. We are pretty sure that there is much more money out there in the market, but since we are just starting this process of identifying and giving a size to the volume of the market. No? Next slide. So very quickly, well, Cyril already explained the origin of GSG, the G8 first. Obviously, we were not, Spain is not part of the G8, so we were not in that group. But when in 2015 the G8 became the GSG and was open also to the private sector initiative, a number of new countries start entering. You see all of them there, but until 2018, Spain was not there, no? And so quite surprisingly. And so basically we decided to act. A number of organizations, concretely 3 organizations, we decided just to act and to unite the main ecosystem players, no? And so for that, we next slide, please. For that, we created For Impacto. Basically, For Impacto, it's an association. There are 3 founding members. Open Value, Unlimited, Euro Capital. Open Value is the foundation of a large asset manager in Spain, which is Cobas Asset Management, and they are channeling their strategy around impact investment from the foundation, and also including, in our opinion, very smartly, also venture philanthropy approaches. No? I'll come to that later. Then Unlimited, it's a foundation supporting social entrepreneurs. I'm founding also trustee of Unlimited, and so that we also had the view of the demand of capital, as I was mentioning before. And finally, the 3rd founding member is Euro Capital, which is a multifamily office. No? And basically they enter because it's obvious that now also wealthy families and in general this profile of owners of capital are also demanding new impact products. No? So our as you see, our goal, we have 3 goals, which is really to mobilize and coordinate the different players of the ecosystem build consensus, and also was to lead the process for Spain to join GSG. So for that, we've been building the social impact investment task force in Spain, and we gather more than 70 leading organizations in the task force. So please, next slide. So for that, we wanted to be really structured and to be really outcomes oriented. So all this process beginning on the 8th of May 2018, as you see, and ended up in 10th of June. So just a few months ago, when finally Spain entered the GSG, and we had Sir Ronald Cohen here in Spain announcing it. So through all this process, because the GSG also was required, like, okay, you for Impacto, let us know, and you have to make sure that you, not just that you can mobilize the different players of the ecosystem, but also to map the ecosystem. No? So for that, we partner with a number of strategic partners, one of them being ESADE Entrepreneurship Institute, which are very good at it and know very well the market. And so basically, we organize different events to really mobilize the ecosystem in different cities, Madrid, Bilbao, Barcelona, and at the same time, we brought this task force to these different cities to really work on what we were doing. No? So there you see very quickly so pictures. So as you could see, there was really a participative and bottom-up project. So, and here I have to mention, as you see, one of the key messages there is that we got the government explicit support. So while in Spain, this has been led by the civil society and the private initiative, which is not the case as in the countries from the G8, because this was really an initiative led by the practitioners. No? So it was really bottom-up. But we got, and that was extremely important for us, the support from the acting government right now, specifically from the SDGs High Commissionerate, which is reporting to the Cabinet Office of the Acting Prime Minister. So that was very important. And when, as you see, 70 organizations, 5 reports, the final one around the impact economy and the big 5 recommendations to make it happen, which I'm going to about later. Basically, we were successful at reaching around 1,000 people to spread all this message, and also we are, according to GSG, a benchmark, no? Because it was really a participative project. So next slide. Yeah, well, that's, you just see articles that so we were, for us it was extremely important really to make this happen also on the media, and to raise the awareness, not just in the social economy sector, but also to bring it on the table other new players. So next slide. And so where we are now, as I mentioned, we just published all this report that was referended by the Spanish National Advisory Board, which I'm going to back later as well. And so this report has 5 main recommendations, high-level recommendations. So where we are now is, well, from June, after the summertime, from September to December, we are together with the National Advisory Board defining what will be the action plan for the next 2 years. And so from January to June 2021, we'll start implementing these recommendations. Now, obviously, there is a very large set. New slide, please. I think this is a video, but I think we can go to the next slide, because basically it's about the process I just explained you. So the recommendations by the sector and endorsed by the National Advisory Board, which is the recommendations that we presented to GSG to make this market happen, are the following. So the first one is really about to strengthen the social enterprises through incubators and accelerators. What we see here in Spain is that the market of supporting social enterprises, both social economy enterprises and this new emerging trend, is quite fragmented. So what we are here just about to start next year is eventually thinking about creating a large consortium of social incubators, accelerators to support social enterprises at scale. No? This is something we've been doing research that we believe like the UK model is quite interesting. So making this alliance happen of social incubators and accelerators. So and so for that, we believe it's really important not just to think about the financial instrument, investing financial instruments, but also it's very important providing technical assistance to the market, so that if we are able to strengthen the support for social enterprises, there will be more social enterprises and therefore a larger deal flow and pipeline of social entrepreneurs and enterprises. Here sharing also Cyril comment before, I think we all do share in general that we lack of, there is a lack of investable projects. So that's in the short term, and in the medium and long term, building new financial vehicles. So the second one is about attracting and building new impact funds funded through either private money, but also public money, and to catalyze the impact investment sector. So here we're talking about European funding from structural funds, from the technical assistant perspective, or even the European Investment Fund. So Uli will tell us about that later. And we are following very closely the new programming period of for 2021-2027, where we believe that there will be a interest there. Another thing we believe it's also very important is to engage with financial institutions, so that it's not just about creating new impact funds, but also distributing them, selling them as wholesalers. So in that sense, also we're engaging with different banks and financial institutions to help us in that endeavor. Another thing, as you see, the 2.6 recommendation, which is quite important, is also from an ISR perspective. Responsible and sustainable investing perspective in English. Also following very closely this new action plan by the European Union about the definition of how to measure and how to manage this sort of investments. And so therefore, basically a European harmonized legal framework. Next one. So another very important point is the philanthropic capital. So how we can leverage foundations, either knowledge or resources, really to help the impact investment sector grow. And so here we will be focusing on two elements in the next years. First of all is from a venture philanthropy perspective, we believe it's very important really to bring patient capital in the table, to bring even smart grants, long-term grants, and to support social enterprises and social entrepreneurs to grow, so that impact investors can come later and really invest in investable enterprises. Another key element also that we'll be following is the what's called mission-related investment. So it's how the endowments of foundations can be used to invest in either social responsible investment products, but also in impact funds. So a diversified impact portfolio by the endowments of foundations. We have one or two in Spain, but we believe also this is going to be a very important element in the short to medium term. So fourth one is obviously the outcome funds and the payment by result contracts. As I mentioned before, there is only in Spain 4 feasibility studies ongoing. Some of these feasibility studies have been released already, and now we want to continue working with regional governments and municipal, but also very important, trying to elevate this to the central government. No, so we believe here initiatives like the French initiatives are very important, or even the Finland, the Citra case. No, now that they organized a few weeks ago an event around well-being ecosystems and outcome funds in Helsinki. So we'll be working on that very closely, and obviously engaging with some of the pioneers that have been pushing these social impact bonds for the next 3 to 5 years, I would say. So here is really about raising awareness, and mainly in the public sector. And so finally, the fifth recommendation, it's about keep creating knowledge and building the market infrastructure. So here we will be working on in the short term with three strategies within this recommendation. First of all is understanding that Spain is a quasi-federal government, so it's very important that we want to somehow to decentralize also the awareness of impact investment. Last year we did a very strong effort in Barcelona, Bilbao, and Madrid. Next year we will keep that, but also we want to reach new cities and new regions. No? Second one, continue our research, and so keep analyzing the market, and for that we'll be working also with ESADE. And the third one, also very important, is to keep focusing and to deepen into the impact and measurement skills needed. No? And so in that sense, we're working closely with the Impact Management Project, which is also a global initiative, partly where GSG is also a member, and where different institutions like the GIN, the OECD, or the Principles of Responsible Investment are working. So we'll be also working on that to create this market and to keep building knowledge. No? And so finally, because time is running, the final slide, please, about how we are organized. So here is the Spanish National Advisory Board is chaired by Juan Bernal, which is the managing director of CaixaBank Asset Manager. We are very happy that they accepted to chair the board, because as you might know also, CaixaBank is owned by Caixa Foundation, which is a very, very large foundation here in Spain. And so they can be, we would like them to be, and they will see, because this is just the beginning, Caixa to play an important role model for other banks and other players to follow. No? The National Advisory Board, you won't see them there, this logo, but this is made of other 16 members, ranging from when you see there the Supply Commission, Demand Commission, Intermediation Commission, all these are members of the National Advisory Board, plus a number of others, which we thought was very important from a venture philanthropy perspective. For example, the Spanish Association of Foundations. We have also Fundación 11, which is another very, very relevant player in the traditional social economy in Spain. So what we wanted is to bring all together this more traditional social economy with the new players in this impact economy. No? Also, since the NAB released some recommendations, and now it's also about to to create the new ones and really to deepen into the different recommendations. We thought it was very important to have strategic partners. So from, as I mentioned before, from the research side, ESADE will be working with the National Advisory Board, Cuatro Casas, which is a law firm, CREAP from the public affairs and policy, and together with Red to Red working on the public European structural funds and all these resources that we expect are will be released from European institutions. And well, finally, for Impacto, which was a promoter and now is acting also as a secretariat of all this. So we are the executing arm of the initiative, which, as I mentioned, for Impacto was funded by Open Value, Unlimited, and Eurocapital. So this is just the beginning for us, but we are very excited about it because there is a lot of players in the market and a lot of content. So you will hear about us, and very happy to later on to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. And I would like to remind to our audience that you have the possibility to write your questions. And now, please, Yuli, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Yuli? Yuli, can you hear us? Yuli, the floor is yours. Can you hear us? I'm really sorry for the audience. We have these technical issues. Yuli, can you hear us? I'm really sorry for the audience. Yuli, can you hear us? Yuli? Yes. Maybe we can start with the Q&A session with the first two speakers, and meanwhile we are trying to find the solution for these technical issues with Yuli Grammenbacher. Thank you. So we already have the first question for Cyril. Which would be the positive effects of an European social taxonomy from your point of view?
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. It would probably reduce the capital requirements of banks to lend to social economy organizations. So it would probably incentivize banks to lend more in this field. And we haven't made any research in credit cooperative because this is an idea we are pushing. We are starting to push, but it would make a lot of sense in order to increase the volumes of financing available for these organizations, at least in terms of bank lending.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question for Jose Luis. How do you think the sector would be able to attract more institutional investors? What needs to change to reach the big scale funding in Spain?
So I think one very important element is to de-risk investments. No? So we see because institutional investors are very cautious about the way they manage their money, depending obviously on the institutional investors. No, but so for example, we believe and we'll be working on that about blended instruments. So if we would be capable to bring, to design instruments so that with different tranches of capital, and maybe first loss tranches would be covered by either foundations, large foundations, or even public funding, that would be very helpful for other large institutional investors to come into the game, because they would see less risky investments. No? So I think a key element is to de-risk investments for institutional investors to come into the game. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We have.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Hello.
So we can start with you. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and my apologies for the technology problems we seem to have. We have tested it before, but it let us down again. Good afternoon to everybody, and yes, I'm following on to two very pertinent and impressive presentations on the impact investment ecosystem in Europe. On one side, the case study of France, who probably it's fair to say from the continental European countries is the only country that has managed to close the gap with the impact investment, the market leadership that the UK represents. And on the other side, the impact investment initiative of the Spanish market, who it's probably fair to say over the last few years has made the most impressive effort in stepping up the construction of its own ecosystem in the country, and has probably led to the most pertinent diversity of the ecosystem in terms of also the access for entrepreneurship to a functioning market environment. I would like to use my few minutes to guide you a little bit through the considerations that are going on at pan-European level. And I deliberately made reference to the initiatives that happen at national level because it is a very strong guiding line for the objectives of the European initiative. The European initiative actually is supposed to make a contribution that is complementary to the national advisory boards and their activities, and is not supposed to create another layer of networking or of meeting on impact topics without having any tangible results. And this is the reason why at the European level we have amongst the founding members of the Regional Advisory Board of Europe spent quite some time deliberating on what the ideal interface between the EU Regional Advisory Board and the National Advisory Boards would be. And if I could ask to go back to the slide that gives the chart, yes, this chart, and we stay on that for a bit. You are aware that in the meantime we have got a number of European countries that have created their own national structures and are operating very successfully. And on the other side, we have got this angle of pan-European initiatives that are of relevance both at the level of the GSG on the global scale, but also in the implementation at national advisory board level. And we were reflecting on this role of the European Advisory Board as an interface between those two worlds, and came to the conclusion that actually there is no point in us creating an additional layer of meeting of discussion of operating in that framework amongst the European institutions that already independently of the efforts that go on the GSG and beyond do meet on those topics on a very regular basis because of the financial instruments that are put in place at the pan-European level. And hence, the design of the European initiative eventually was driven towards creating on one side a very regular and very tight interface with the national initiatives in order to be able to contribute to national initiatives, but also to take market demand from national initiatives and carry them into the design of policy action on one side, and the other one to actually create amongst pan-European players that are looking after the development of the impact investment space to broaden that basis and foster the cooperation between pan-European organizations that have an interest in building this ecosystem, so that their initiatives are not progressing in isolation, but actually are mutually complementary and endorsing each other. So if you could go to this slide that shows the objectives of the regional advisory boards, the next one, please. Yes, those have been what you see plotted in the 4 stars are the objectives that the European Advisory Board actually is looking after. As I said, the importance for this structure is to provide very concrete and very tangible and implementable access to information, to financial instruments, to policy action, so that they can be put in practice and reach actually the target beneficiaries of those policy instruments in the shortest possible way, for which we across the board have always recognized that the interface that are available in financial intermediaries, in policy action, in stakeholders of the national ecosystems is the most relevant interface that we can target. And as a result, we've basically created amongst the national advisory boards and the EU regional advisory board this platform of national advisory boards and the EU regional advisory boards to meet on a regular basis and create a kind of institutionalized dialogue around those topics. The importance that we see at the European level for this interaction is that in the past it has materialized quite a number of times that initiatives that have been designed with the best possible intention have proven to need too long to be either carried into the market and been known in the market as being available, or if they have been known in the market, they have taken quite some time until they have been rightly calibrated to the effective market demand. And frequently this time frame needed to adjust to what is really needed in the market is something that could have been prevented by having a closer tie-in in the policy design, in the policy instruments design, and that is one of the objectives that we're pursuing with this umbrella structure of this regional advisory board on European level. And it is in the same intention that the founding members of the European Regional Advisory Board, which are the EIF as the kind of tasked member to put this in place, and the European Investment Bank and the European Commission as natural members of this advisory board because of their pan-European remit, that we have amongst the 3 of us decided that we should not keep this as platform to us 3 members who, as I said before, are interacting with each other anyways on a very regular basis, but that we should branch that out to other players at a pan-European level that are interested in building these ecosystems, that have large stakeholder communities that play a very relevant role in building these ecosystems. And those the first 3 organizations that we are talking with to build this extension of the European Regional Advisory Board are the EVPA, notably are the World Economic Forum and are the OECD, both with their very different stakeholder communities in place, which will help to contribute the penetration of the entire economic tissue of the European Union with an impact investment relevant approach. If we look at the interface, for instance, with the EVPA, what springs to mind is the interface, obviously, with philanthropic organizations. It's equally the interface with investment structures, investment funds, and players in the impact investment space that actually can contribute to the design of instruments that do meet the entire spectrum of market players and not just one that is fitting with one or the other organization. It is equally an important interface with an increasingly important community in the impact investment space, which is revolving around the constituency of foundations. On the other side, there are very strong initiatives ongoing at the level of the OECD in the design of European and beyond Europe targeted policy action in defining the framework in which the social economy operates. And not least with the World Economic Forum, there is this attractiveness of having an interface to the private sector and the corporate world and asset managers from private sector backgrounds that are very relevant in looking at how can impact investing be carried out, the bounds and the limitations of being a niche product in the capital markets towards something that becomes a kind of genuine instruments of a policy action approach. If I'm looking at the initiatives that we are looking at currently, obviously the pan-European space is at a very important intersection today, because we're in the midst of the definition of the next programming period, for which the European Commission, under the new leadership of President von der Leyen, has put out a number of core priorities and strategic pillars, of which the social dimension of the European Union's evolution and development is a very important one. And this is going to be reflected very prominently in the handwriting of the next program period of the European Commission. And in this context, a number of initiatives obviously are currently in the process of being discussed. And for this process, it is very important that the kind of pain points of the social economy are actually communicated, made transparent, and integrated in the right manner. And this is an invitation to all people in the audience of this webinar being linked or associated with one or the other group of stakeholders in the social economy space across the entire spectrum. And let us be very clear about that. This ranges from the philanthropic space to the for-profit impact investment space, to bring forward any shortcomings that the access to impact investment financing tools actually represents in the various constituencies. Please do not hesitate through your national advisory boards to come forward with those observations that you may have, because they are very welcome contributions to this design phase of policy action. There's one concrete element on which actually the regional advisory board and national advisory boards and the GSG structure as a central management unit have initiated a concrete project process upon, which is the creation of a pan-European outcome fund initiative for social inclusion. This is an initiative that has actually emerged out of various approaches and attempts to create a response to the omnipresent theme of migrants and how to deal with it on a pan-European level, both in terms of integration, in terms of distribution of the charge of dealing with refugee streams. But actually, the discussion has in the process also evolved further to look at it not just at dealing with one group of marginalized community that needs to be integrated, but look at it from a pan-European perspective as a true issue of social cohesion with respect to any constituencies in the European society. And in doing so, maybe take away the competition for policy attention that may prevail in one or the other political debate that may then be picked up in various national or even international discussions, that more attention is given to the migrant crisis than to the issues of well-being that actually prevail in the genuine European context. From that perspective, the scope of this initiative has been broadened to be a social inclusion focused project rather than a migrant focused only initiative. And in order to move that forward, the GSG has recently actually approved an internal budget to launch the brief for a design phase of this project. And such a project actually requires a feasibility study in order to define what is the best response to the issues that are supposed to be addressed, and that feasibility study needs to look obviously at the scope, what can reasonably be included without dispersing it too widely that it doesn't make sense at all anymore, and what is wide enough not to be confining the topic to constituencies or societal issues that because of a disbalance lack the acceptance from a broader community point of view. Obviously, it's also the question of whether an outcome fund as such is the right response, and if so, what is the right level of intervention for such a product? The question is, does such a European initiative make sense as a centralized outcome fund, or is it not better placed at the level of individual member states that then can actually tailor the use of outcome funds to more specific national issues and problems to be solved? Not least because the question is also one of the governance and the efficiency in implementation, because the more centralized such a structure is, the more layers it obviously may require in the implementation. And if we look at the capital efficiency of money that is deployed through such a structure, one of the elements to be observed is obviously how much money is used to maintain the structure that implements the initiative, and how much funds are actually available to do the real job of getting the problem addressed. So this is one initiative that I wanted to highlight specifically, because it's something that is that has been launched earlier this year as an initiative endorsed by the group of the national advisory boards in the meeting that we had earlier this year in Milan. The other initiatives that are occurring at the pan-European level, which are possibly worthwhile mentioning, are initiatives to facilitate a market environment where the group of social enterprises that are a core policy target to be supported get an environment of access to policy support and financial instruments that makes their life not more complicated than a plain vanilla enterprise actually finds in the market. We do know that we have the issue to deal with specifically in the social enterprise space, that we have on one side a kind of pertinent help for social enterprises to bring forward their business models and grow in their activities and the impact that they can achieve. And on the other side, policy instruments always struggle with the danger of being abused for purposes that are not intended in the policy action. And in this specific case, it would be that the label of being a social enterprise or social impact-driven activity being pretended in order to actually get support that is not intended for the underlying activity as such. And that is a kind of relatively complicated topic which refers to the definition of what is a social enterprise, what accountability for impact there needs to be. Accountability means what type of impact measurement is involved in this, and ultimately what status does a social enterprise have also in cross-border activities, because social enterprises currently in Europe in individual countries are defined with relatively homogeneous types of interpretations of the status. And that is one of the elements where the debate of pan-European policy instruments obviously comes also into play, because pan-European policy instruments do require that there is a common understanding, a consensus on the criteria that apply to the eligibility of policy targets. And so this is a debate that is also ongoing, where my personal observation is that a lot of progress has been made recently by focusing not on the status of profitability in enterprises, not on the status of for-profit or non-for-profit in their business models, but to look at what is the impact objective that they pursue through their operating model, no matter whether this is a kind of non-for-profit activity or for-profit activity, no matter whether they migrate over the lifetime of the enterprises or not, but that the accountability for the impact agenda that they are pursuing is actually key. I think I will leave it there to leave a little bit of time for the Q&A as well, because I see that we are compared to the agenda quite a bit over time. Maybe this is a good moment to actually hand the floor back to the moderators and head into the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Yuli. Indeed, and now we can continue the Q&A session, and we have many questions from our audience today. So the first question is for Cyril. Corporate foundations can play a bigger role in impact investing. There is a big need to still provide grants and subsidize to stimulate a still ineffective market. What steps are being taken that corporate foundations can play a bigger role? Cyril?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yes, corporate foundations are also active. So we have both the foundation on one side, the CSR policy of the corporation on the other side, and we have the employee saving schemes, the 90/10 investment fund, also in the loop. And one example, and I don't know if I answer correctly to the question, but one example of associating both the foundation and the 90/10 investment fund, employee saving scheme, and the CSR is Schneider Electric, which is one of the CAC 40 company, which has developed a program around access to energy in France as well as in other parts of the world. And the foundation is in programs of coaching and training entrepreneurs to become electricians. So the part of the foundation in this program is to organize coaching and training of electricians. We see other foundations also, but probably the French market in terms of corporate foundation is less active than in other countries. We are still early in the impact investment field by foundations. And for more on this topic, the Impact Invest Lab produced research last year, which is available on the Impact Invest Lab website.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have another question for Jose Luis. The Spanish NAB puts a great emphasis on social incubators and accelerators. How have you seen in the past that these are essential for the growth on the social economy?
So yeah, as I mentioned, the support to social enterprises is super relevant. And so in terms of the social economy, so so we have the challenge here in Spain is social economy has quite a broad definition by law. As I mentioned, 2012 law and 11, sorry, and amounts for 10% of the Spanish GDP. The challenge we have in Spain is that social economy includes market social enterprises, meaning cooperatives, companies to insert like people with disabilities into the market, etc. So what we've seen is that there is a number of incubator accelerators working in this space, no? But at the same time, social economy includes associations and foundation, non-profit entities. So what we see here is the challenge is, and also going back to Uli's comment around the definition of what a social enterprise is. No, it's a non-profit social enterprise. It's for-profit social enterprise. It's true that what we've seen is less support for non-profit social enterprises, meaning social associations and foundations that eventually have a sustainable business model, in the sense that they are not distributing dividends but are sustainable. But we see a lack of support to these sort of third sector entities. So the challenge we have in Spain and what we'll be working is to unite in these two words, let's say, because both have the same mission but different, let's say, legal structures. No, so here we have a challenge, and also what we will be doing is looking also at other European countries, what at the European level institutions are doing, how this is they're defining it, and also examples from France, Portugal, Germany, or Italy, no, which also has some interesting models.
Thank you very much. We have a question for Yuli. How investment plan should facilitate the social impact investment ecosystem? And in which...
Can you repeat the first part of the question, because it was a bad connection?
Okay.
How?
No problem. How InvestEU program should facilitate the social impact investment ecosystem, and in which timeline?
Okay. I mean, a lot of the InvestEU framework is still under construction as we speak, and hence there is a lot of movement in this agenda still, and that's also the reason why I extend the invitation to everybody to still contribute to this debate, because there is still quite a number of things in flux. But I think the objective of InvestEU is to create a defragmented market environment across the board, not only in terms of the social impact investment space, but in general. If we look at the design of previous policy action programs under the Commission programs in previous budget cycles, initiatives have been very fragmented in the sense that they have been put under the management and the responsibility of individual parts of the European Commission for a kind of autonomous management approach. And the biggest change in the InvestEU initiative is to actually bring the all the initiatives that the European Commission wants to bring forward under its policy action program for the next programming period, to put them under one umbrella in order to create smoother interfaces between the different policy priorities, and to allow the policy instruments to adapt themselves to market demand rather than asking the market demand to adapt itself to the policy programs, because ultimately what needs to be endorsed is the market structures. In the social impact space, I think the main initiatives will be a scaling of what has been piloted and tested in the existing programming period, meaning the availability of a broad spectrum of funding instruments that addresses companies from the microfinance level, micro enterprise level, up to impact companies, impact enterprises that operate at scale, with instruments that are tailored and adopted to that type of activities. I think it is fair to say that a social enterprise that is kickstarted by a social incubator has a different funding requirement, a different perspective to grow, a different perspective also in terms of the exit perspective, than an enterprise that actually has a market presence already that attracts capital from mainstream venture capital or alike. And that is something that needs to be reflected in the risk return profiles of the instruments, that needs to be reflected in the maturity of the instruments, that needs to be reflected in the redemption means that such an instruments have, from self-amortizing to pure equity instruments. So I think that is a very important element to consider. And the other avenue that certainly will continue to have an important presence in this programming period is the further development of payment by result instruments that have actually been equally tested in the current programming period. And despite the fact that they need currently still a lot of structuring input in order to get off the ground, I think it is fair to say that there is a demand for this type of instrument now across the European continent, from Portugal to Finland, that justifies that more efforts are spent on this.
Okay, thank you, Yuli. We can end here the Q&A session. I would like to thank all our speakers of today for your speeches and for this interesting exchange of knowledge. We saw the differences between the impact investment ecosystem in France and Spain and the future challenges that these countries need to face in the coming years to grow the sector. What was also highlighted today is the importance of the public sector and the added value of the collaboration between the public and the private sector in the impact investment ecosystem in Europe. For this reason, European coordination that respects the diversity of the European countries and facilitates a functional collaboration among them is crucial at that moment. As the sector has matured, attracting more and more resources and organization, EVPA sees investors adopting a spectrum of impact strategies. On one side, there are investors for impact who take risks and that no one else can or is willing to take, putting the business model of the social organization at the center. On the other side, there are investors with impact who want to put their money to a good cause, but need to guarantee a certain financial return. We believe that this distinction is crucial one to making the European ecosystem to avoid the risk of green and impact washing. If you are interested in looking more into this topic, I encourage you to take a look at the EVPA Impact Paper series we publish in partnership with the Pioneers Post. In this series, EVPA has invited 8 thought leaders to reflect on where the social impact ecosystem is going and how investing for and with impact are different yet complementary strategies. If you want to learn more and be part of the change in the impact investment ecosystem, join us at the EVPA 15th Annual Conference on 5, 6, and 7 November in The Hague. Also, I would like to thank all our participants today and to remind them that the recording of this webinar together with the slides will be available on our website soon. In addition, I would kindly remind you that a short survey will pop up on your screen. We would greatly appreciate if you could take 2 minutes to fill this in. It is also an opportunity to let us know about a specific policy topic you would like us to address in our policy webinar series. So don't hesitate to grab it. Thank you for attending this webinar and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.